What if the man who disappeared from your life suddenly controlled whether you could live with yourself? Because that's what happened to me. It had been 7 years since I last heard his voice. 7 years since I blocked his number, deleted the photos, and convinced myself I didn't need answers anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was just finished. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I was standing in my kitchen when it happened. My lunch was still warm on the counter. The sink was half full. Everything looked normal, like my life hadn't gotten the memo that something irreversible was about to happen. I answered. A woman said my name carefully, the way people do when they're about to say something heavy. She told me she was calling from a hospital. Then she asked if I knew Daniel Carter. My mouth went dry. She didn't circle around it. She said he was in critical condition, that multiple organs were failing, that they were out of time. Hours, not days. I leaned against the counter because my legs suddenly didn't feel steady. Then she said something that made my thoughts stall. We found your name in his medical records. I hadn't been part of his life for years. I asked her why my name would even be there. She explained that when Daniel and I were together, we'd signed up for a long-term health registry, the kind you forget about until it matters. Routine testing, compatibility data. At the time, it felt meaningless. Now it wasn't. She told me I was a rare genetic match, not family, not borderline compatible. Rare. There was a pause on the line before she spoke again. You may be the only person who can save him. I stared at the wall, trying to breathe. This was the man who walked away without explaining. The man who left me to rebuild myself alone. The man I swore I'd never let back into my life. And now I was being asked to come to the hospital and make a decision no one prepares you for. Not just whether he lived, but whether I could carry the weight of his death or the consequences of saving him. I didn't go straight to his room. That surprised me. When someone is dying, you expect urgency, hallways, beeping machines, a rush. Instead, they guided me down a quiet corridor and into a small consultation room with no windows. The door closed behind me with a soft click. That's where the doctors sat me down. One of them pulled up his file on a screen. Charts, numbers, lines dipping lower than they should. He explained that Daniel wasn't just sick, his body was shutting down in stages. They were supporting him, slowing the damage, but they weren't fixing anything. Then he looked directly at me and said, "We need to be very clear with you before this goes any further." My chest tightened. He explained the procedure, what donation would mean, how much they would take, how recovery usually goes. His voice was steady, almost rehearsed. He wasn't trying to scare me. That somehow made it worse. Then he paused. "There is no medical obligation for you to do this." For half a second, my shoulders loosened. Then he continued. He explained that once I agreed, there was no clean exit. That backing out late could cause damage, not just medically, but legally and emotionally. That consent wasn't just a signature. It was a commitment that would follow me long after the surgery was over. Then his questions shifted. Did I have dependents? Did my job require physical labor? Was there anyone who relied on me if something went wrong? I answered automatically, and then it hit me. He wasn't asking out of concern. He was mapping the fallout if something went wrong. This decision wasn't contained to a hospital room. It would spill into my body, my work, my future. I asked the question I'd been avoiding. How long does he have if I say no? He didn't hesitate. Less than 72 hours. No softening, no pause. Then he added something quieter. He knows we contacted you. That stopped me. I asked if Daniel had asked for me. If he'd said anything. The doctor shook his head. He said if you came, it had to be your choice, he said, and that we shouldn't explain why he asked for you. That unsettled me more than anything else. I still hadn't seen him. I still hadn't heard his voice. And yet he was already rearranging my life again. The doctor stood up and said, "You can see him now, but I need to warn you, once you do, this decision becomes much harder." He was right. Because as I stepped toward that room, I realized this wasn't just about whether I could save him. It was about whether seeing him would take the choice away from me before I ever opened my mouth. The room was quieter than I expected. No alarms, no shouting, just the low hum of machines and the slow, mechanical rhythm of someone else breathing for him. For a second, I stayed by the door, my hand still on the handle, like I could leave if I wanted to. I couldn't. He was thinner than I remembered. Not dramatically, just enough to feel wrong. His skin had that pale, stretched look that comes from being still for too long. Tubes ran where words should have been. I told myself not to look at his face yet. I failed. His eyes were closed. His lashes rested against his cheeks in a way that made him look younger. Less certain. Less like the man who disappeared without a word. I took one step forward. That was all it took. His eyes opened. Not wide, not suddenly, just enough to know he saw me. The room shifted. He didn't speak. He couldn't. The tube made sure of that. But his eyes followed me as I came closer, like he was afraid I might vanish if he blinked too long. I stopped beside the bed. I realized then how carefully I'd rehearsed this moment, the questions I'd demand answers to, the anger I'd finally let out. None of it survived the reality of him lying there, unable to even sit up. He lifted his hand. It shook. I didn't take it. A nurse stepped in quietly, adjusted something, then left us alone again. The door closed behind her with that same soft click. My heart was loud in my ears. "I didn't come to forgive you," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "And I didn't come to promise anything." His fingers curled slightly, like he understood. I asked him why, not gently, not kindly, just why. He closed his eyes. When they opened again, they were wet. He tried to speak. The machine answered for him. I waited. For a second, I hated him for making me the strong one again. Then he shook his head, once. That was his answer. No explanation, no justification, no confession. I stood there, staring at the man who left me carrying all the damage once, and was doing it again without even lifting his hand. The doctor had been right. Seeing him didn't make the decision clearer. It made pretending I had won impossible. Because I understood then that whatever happened next wouldn't be about what he deserved. It would be about whether I could walk out of that room without hating myself for the rest of my life. They didn't rush me. That was the worst part. No one said hurry. No one said time is running out. Instead, everything slowed down in a way that felt intentional, like the hospital understood I couldn't escape this moment even if I wanted to. A coordinator led me into another room, not the consultation room. This one was brighter, cleaner, a desk instead of a bed, a neat stack of papers instead of machines. She placed the forms in front of me and slid a pen across the table. "This doesn't mean you're saying yes," she said. "It just means you understand what yes involves." I stared at the first page. My name was already printed at the top. That felt wrong. Like something had already been decided without me. She walked me through everything calmly. What they would take, what could go wrong, what recovery might look like if everything went right. Her voice never changed, but every sentence carried a quiet warning. I nodded when I was supposed to. At some point, I stopped hearing words and started hearing consequences. Possible complications, extended recovery, loss of income, permanent changes. I realized no one had asked what would happen if I broke. Each page asked for initials, not a signature, initials, small marks, easy to make, hard to take back. I asked how much time I had. She didn't check a clock. "Enough," she said, "but not a lot." Then she added almost casually, "If you choose not to move forward, we'll respect that, but we need to know soon." Not today, not this hour, soon. Soon felt like a hand pressing between my shoulders. I thought about standing up, about pushing the chair back and saying I couldn't do this, that I wouldn't, that this was too much. But my body didn't move. Instead, I kept reading. One line stopped me completely. It explained that once the surgical team was mobilized, backing out could affect more than just schedules. Other patients, other resources, other lives. I looked up at her. "So if I say yes," I said slowly, "I'm not the only one involved anymore." She didn't correct me. That was the moment I understood the trap. This wasn't just about saving him or protecting myself. It was about becoming a fixed point in a system that had already started moving forward. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I hadn't signed anything yet, but I could feel the space for no shrinking. Then the coordinator stood and said, "The surgeon is ready to speak with you now." And I understood something terrifying. This wasn't the end of the decision. This was the last quiet moment before it stopped being theoretical. The surgeon didn't sit down. That should have warned me. He stood across from the desk, hands folded, already looking at the chart like it belonged to him more than it belonged to me. His voice was calm, practiced, almost careful. He explained the procedure again. Shorter this time, more decisive. No hypotheticals, just facts that assumed forward motion. Then he said something that shifted the air in the room. "If we proceed," he said, "we need to begin preparations immediately." "Not if you choose. Not if you decide. If we proceed." I asked him what would happen if I didn't. He paused not long enough to feel kind. Then he said, "We'll continue supportive care, but without intervention, his body will fail. Soon." Soon again. I looked at the consent forms still open on the desk. My initials already scattered across the pages like I'd been leaving a trail without realizing it. The surgeon leaned forward slightly. "There's something else you should understand," he said. "Once we start pre-op, stopping isn't just difficult, it becomes disruptive. Teams are activated. Operating rooms are blocked. Other surgeries are delayed." I nodded, even though my head felt hollow. This wasn't new information. This was confirmation. He slid the final page toward me, the one with the signature line. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel resolved. I felt managed. I signed because not signing had started to feel like destruction instead of choice. The pen scratched the paper. Quiet, permanent. No one reacted. That was the strangest part. No relief, no urgency spike. Just a shift like something heavy had clicked into place. The surgeon nodded once and said, "We'll take good care of you." Not him, you. That landed harder than anything else. They moved quickly after that, a bracelet around my wrist. A nurse asking me to confirm my name, my date of birth, my consent. Each confirmation felt like another door closing behind me. As they wheeled me toward pre-op, I passed the hallway that led to his room. I didn't look. I understood then that this wasn't about saving him. It was about the version of myself that wouldn't exist if I walked away. The last thing I remember before the doors closed was the ceiling lights sliding past, one after another, like markers I couldn't step back across. When I woke up, my body felt unfamiliar, heavy, sore in places I didn't know how to explain. A nurse noticed I was awake and spoke quietly. "The surgery went as planned," she said. "He's stable." Stable, not saved, not fixed, just ongoing. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of living inside a decision that couldn't be reversed. I walked out altered, and there was no version of me that could go back.